we're going to get on with our real speaker and the real message today, and I'm really looking forward to this. We had Rafael DeCardenas come and speak to us when we were at our previous meeting location. And I think he calls himself Cuban by birth, American by choice, and something like fortunate to be an Okie.
Okie with pride.
Okie with pride, there we go. But he is a man that understands the evil of communism, understands the evils of the Castro brothers, and has come to understand what made America great originally. And he is a man that is stayed engaged with the Cuban people and has desired for them to see liberty, probably a restoration of some of the property that was stolen from them, and a variety of other things. I'm not going to try to do a speech. Please welcome Rafael DeCardenas. Rafael, thank you for coming today.
Man, I tell you,
Just hold it close.
I hope I live up to that introduction. I tell you, yes. I'm already a little nervous. I tell you what.
Rafael, hold it right in front of your mouth.
Okay, I'm already nervous because just before I left the house, I received several Facebooks from my compatriots in Miami, Florida, and some of the other Cuban Americans living over here. They found out I was making a speech. They said, please, do good. Let them know what the Cuban American thinks. So please, do good. So just before I left the house, I got that. So I didn't think, I'm a little nervous today. But I tell you what, I think before I start to the crux of my speech, I think I need to address some stuff because there's a lot of misinformation.
Ralph, keep it real close, please.
It's a lot of misinformation. Okay, I got it now. Yeah. A lot of misinformation. A lot of people, all they hear is what the press tells them. They know absolutely nothing about Cuba. And a little bit of history needs to be told. For you guys who don't know much about the history of Cuba and the cohesiveness with the United States, in 1898, during the Spanish-American War, which all remember, Teddy Roosevelt, San Juan Hill, after that was over, Cuba became a possession of the United States until 1902, 1898 to 1902. Cuba was a possession of the United States. Some fought to stay as a possession, become like Puerto Rico has. Some fought against it, including my great-grandfather, who was a Major General of the War of Independence against Spain. They wanted freedom. They wanted to become a republic. So they did. Unfortunately, through the years, even though Cuba was, in my opinion, the most beautiful place in the world, not only because the natural beauties that Cuba has. You've been to Cuba, you know what I'm talking about. You know, it wasn't only the most beautiful place in the world, but the riches in Cuba were unbelievable. Cuba was considered the sugar bowl of the world. Cuba produced more sugar than any other country. Forget Hawaii. Hawaii didn't even come into the picture then. Cuba was the sugarcane industry, Cuba. A lot of things that people don't know. Cuba was one of the biggest copper producers in Cuba. Cattle, it was the third country beside Argentina and Venezuela in the production of cattle. And so on, you know, Cuba was a very industrial country. No counting the, of course, the tourist industry in Cuba, you know, that was fantastic. But we were, the United States was our friends. I'll always tell the story, I never forget, coming as a young man to summer camp here in the United States. And some kid from Mexico who was in summer camp with me told me, said, what do you think about these gringos? I said, what's a gringo? I never heard that word in my life. So what do you call them in Cuba? I said, Americans. We had, you know, we had a respect. Because those were the days where speak soft and carry a big stick meant something, okay? Then, January 1st, 1959, 56 years ago, you know, we heard the message of a young lawyer telling us all the corruption, everything that happened in Cuba, we're going to change. I promise you, hope and change. So we bought into it. And I want to tell you right now, for those who don't understand this, the middle class was the one who helped Castro get to power. The middle class is the one that helped Castro get to power. The middle class is the one that left Cuba. Because under communist rule, you only have two things. You have the bosses and the people are starving to death. That's the only thing you have. The middle class disappears under the socialist government. It happens everywhere.
That's right.
A few months after the Revolutionary War, the revolution happened in Cuba, we started hearing that he was changing everything. He was changing the Constitution. And he was taking it in his own hands. Therefore, he started confiscating all businesses. Anything, if you own a business, it was confiscated. All the private enterprises became government enterprises. And, you know, all the financial institutions became government property. He even changed the face of all the currency in Cuba in order to make it happen. So, and then he proceeded to restrict religion in Cuba. I was part of that. I was a member of the Cuban Catholic Youth. And our group became an arm of the underground against Castro. We were a bunch of teenagers. And I never forget talking to my spiritual advisor, my friend, who told us that the Christians of today are no longer martyrs. They are warriors. And as such, should fight the forces of Lucifer that mean to destroy our faith. So we fought hard. We fought hard. Then, I changed things around a little bit. Then, the underground in Cuba was strong. Then in 1961, it came the ill-fated Bay of Pigs. I was in Cuba when that happened. I knew what happened. I was there. A group of Cuban Americans, which among them have over 35 friends and a very dear uncle, members of that, came to invade Cuba. Now, as part of history, I'll tell you, the invasion of Cuba was not a complete takeover of the island. The whole thing was going in, establish a beachhead, then you can ask the UN and the OAS for help. And then he can come over and help you. That's the purpose of Bay of Pigs, not a complete invasion of the whole island. But even if it would have been that way, what happened is that 2 days before the invasion in Cuba, I'll tell you my example. My father and I were taken to a baseball stadium, and we were kept over there for 2 weeks, so we couldn't help the underground. They knew it was coming. Yep. They were waiting for it. Yep. So, and then, talking to my friends and my uncle, the Bay of Pigs, told me, said, you know, during the invasion, all we heard on the radio until we got captured was, hang in there, the planes are coming. Hang in there, the planes are coming. At all times, there were 2 American MiGs that flew over the invasion. American jets, I'm sorry, flew over the invasion. The MiGs, Castro's MiGs, took off. But when they realized that all they were doing is taking pictures of the battle, that's right, they came back and kept hammering. And then, of course, that's what I call the first betrayal. That's right. Because I don't care how you feel about John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy betrayed the Cuban people.
That's right.
He was a good man, otherwise, but he betrayed the Cuban people. Then it was time to leave. We didn't have any choice. You know, either agree with what the government tells you or leave. So that's when a massive middle class left Cuba. You know, the people that came from Cuba in the early 60s over here were all professionals, educated people, people that actually we thought we were coming to the United States to stay for a while because we were going to go back to Cuba, because there wasn't any possible way that with all the interest that America had in Cuba, this was going to happen, only 90 miles away. Then it came the missile crisis. After that happened, we decided, okay, we're not going back for now. This is not going to happen. This is not going to. I remember my mother, the day of the missile crisis, when it all started, my mother was so excited. She said, we're going back to Cuba. I'm going back to Cuba. I said, Mother, I think at the time I was 19 years old. I said, Mother, look at this. I don't know much about politics now, but there's elections in the Congress and the Senate next month. Kennedy is going to lose it. He needs to make a move in order to make it not happen. Right or wrong or indifferent, that's what my opinion was about the missile crisis. You know, the missile crisis, because I will tell you right now, there's missiles in Cuba. There have always been missiles in Cuba. All we know that came out of Cuba was cylinder-like thing covered with tarp, but it was never physically investigated. So then, you know, we came to the United States, we realized that it was time to start our life here. Now, something I got to tell you. You know, I think you will find that most of the Cuban Americans in this country are against this immigration policy that's happening now. And I'll tell you why. We came to this country with 3 changes of clothes, nothing in our back. Oh, the ones that came at the very beginning before it all happened, they brought money with them or whatever. But majority of us came with 3 changes of clothes, not a penny in our backs. But you know what? I look at somebody like my father, who was in his 40s. I asked my father one day, I said, Dad, how can you take it? You're in your 40s. I'm in my late teens. How can you take it? You lost everything you ever had. He said, son, I got my family, I got my life, I have my God, and I have a chance to start all over again. I don't know if any one of you ever met my dad. My dad probably, he always had a smile on his face and he was always whistling. He never looked back. He never looked back. So he became from a businessman to 3 days after arriving in the United States, he was driving a gasoline truck in the Everglades. Something he never done in his life. He was too proud to take a hand out. He was too proud to do anything, you know, take a hand out. There was in many of the Cubans that came to this country. We never took a hand out. You know, we came to Oklahoma. My father had been educated, thank God, in North Carolina. He went to high school in Asheville High, North Carolina. Then he went to LSU for several years. And my dad always said, Miami is a beautiful place to visit, but first chance I get, I'm getting out of here to start a life. Well, we had a friend from Cuba, my parents from Cuba, who was a doctor here in Oklahoma. The doctors that came from Cuba, even though they've been in practice for so many years in Cuba, when they came to practice here, they had to do their validation or whatever it was, So they went to various VA hospitals and whatever, you know. But this doctor became friends with Jim Norick, was the mayor of Oklahoma City then. I'm talking about Jim Norick, the father. Well, Jim Norick asked him, he wanted to sponsor a Cuban family to Oklahoma. So he came to Miami, him and Madeline, talked to us. About a week later, we got a phone call from Jim and says, okay, everything is set. If you guys want to come, everything is arranged. So we came, actually, this is funny. Today is my anniversary here in Oklahoma. I just happened to say, January 7th, 1963, I came to Oklahoma. That just occurred to me. Yeah. And I tell you what, like you said, I am a Cuban Okie. I love this land. I wish the weather was better. But I will tell you, that's one of the first things I learned when I came to Oklahoma. We were received at the airport at Will Rogers. It was kind of a nasty day, you know, kind of a drizzly, nasty day. Mr. Norick took us out of the car. We go for a few blocks, and I see ice in the road. Oh, I didn't make a question. Kept on going. I see it's snowing a little bit. Went a little more, and the sun is shining. And I said, what the heck is going on? He said, son, there's a saying in Oklahoma. If you don't like the weather, stick around 10 minutes, it'll change. That was my very first day in Oklahoma when I learned that lesson. But then, what we did is, Mr. Norick had, and some friends, had arranged for us to have they paid for the first month rent in a duplex. Among their friends, they got enough old furniture to furnish a place for us, and they went as far as buying a 30-day grocery supply for us. We came in on a Thursday, I think it was. Anyhow, Mr. Norick told us after we went to our new place, said, okay, tomorrow my wife will be here to pick the kids up and take it to school and get them enrolled. By the way, I was the first Cuban at the time. I wasn't an American then. Graduated from Northwest Classen High School. So,
What year, Rafael?
63.
Okay, I'm 64.
So, anyhow, and they told my dad, I said, Monday morning, somebody will be here to pick you up and take you to work. Welcome to Oklahoma. You're on your own. What else can you ask for that start in Oklahoma? What else can you ask for? It's up to us to do the rest. So, we learned the language. We acclimated. We became part of the United States. And as soon as we could, we started getting our papers to become citizens. We got the green card first, which actually is blue in case you didn't know it. And then we reported every single year. Went to the post office, got the form, and reported to immigration our situation, where we were at and what we were doing. Every single year. Never regretted doing that. Then it came time to become citizen. Even though I had gone to school and I knew all about the history, I attended all the citizenship classes in all Classen High School downtown. I took my test, which, by the way, I aced it.
Good.
Okay? Then it came the day of citizenship. There were, I don't know how many people, probably 40, 50 people of us over there, you know, received the citizenship. Mr. Norick was there on my behalf. And when the judge saw him, he asked Mr. Norick if he wanted to say a few words. And I will never forget what Mr. Norick said to us. I'm an American because I was born in this country. You're in America because you chose this country. So welcome to our country. Another thing, the day I became an American citizen, some friends of mine were friends of Dewey Bartlett, who was the governor of the state. So he sent the secretary to present me with an honorary Okie certificate. And Mr. Norrie presented me with honorary mayor of Oklahoma City that day. So I became an American citizen, honorary Okie, and honorary mayor of Oklahoma City all that day. November 27, 1969. I'll never forget that day. And then, a few years later, I was invited to make a speech in Muskogee, Oklahoma. They gave me a certificate making me an Okie from Muskogee. So, hey, you think I'm not an Okie? But anyhow, I'll give you some background. But, you know, we need to see about, here's another betrayal that was shown to the Cuban people. When we first came to this country, and I will tell you, anybody who tells me about bigotry and all this stuff, I tell them, I said, don't tell me about it. I was called Speak. I was called a Mira Mira. I was called all this stuff in the 60s in Miami, Florida. But you know what? We didn't care. We knew we were better than that. So we forged ahead. And we acclimated, like I said. We worked for it. I worked and paid for my own education. I used to work at Liberty National Bank in Oklahoma City. In the night crew, night transit, from 5 o'clock in the evening until 2 o'clock in the morning. I went home, got a few hours sleep. I went to Central State College, not UCO, but Central State College, to earn my degree over there, which I never did enough because things happened and I never did get my degree. But then, in the 1980s, we hear this thing about what I call the second betrayal, okay? Jimmy Carter decides that he's going to make a deal with Cuba. And this was actually done at the behest of some of the Cubans that living in Miami. They were communicating with their families in Miami. And they told them, I said, you know, can you work out a deal so we can go to Cuba and pick our family, our relatives and accommodate? So Jimmy Carter decided he was going to do something. Only he didn't know what the hell he was doing. Because what happened is, yes, a flotilla of Cuban Americans left Florida to go to this place, Mariel, Cuba, to pick up their relatives. The only thing they didn't know is that Castro had emptied all the prisons of common prisoners, had emptied all the mental hospitals, rounded up all the prostitutes and everybody, and those were the people that were waiting in Mariel Bay. Those are the people that came to this country. A lot of them ended up having to go back to Cuba. Some of them ended up in prison. I think many of you remember Fort Chaffee. In those days, I was a salesman. I was traveling in Arkansas. And when people asked me, where do you come from? I said, Venezuela. I wasn't about to tell them, you know. So this is what I call the second betrayal of Cuba. Now, on December 17, 2014, just a few weeks ago, that is the biggest betrayal. This is the biggest betrayal that the Cuban American population received in Cuba, or the Cubans received in Cuba. I know when I heard what was going on, well, I don't think I slept for 3 days. You know, just seeing that, I could never imagine, even though we suspected something like that was going to happen. Due to the fact that the Cuban American is the only vote on the Hispanics that Comrade Obama, I call him Comrade Obama,
That's right.
Yeah.
was not able to secure in the Hispanics in the country. As Geraldo Rivera calls, I said, I guess I'm kind of proud to be called that. We're upping Hispanics because the Cubans didn't go along with the rest of the Hispanic population. Which, by the way, let me make an accuracy. I keep referring to Cuban American. I prefer to be called an American of Cuban heritage.
Amen.
Yeah.
I'm an American.
Not hyphenated.
I became an American November 27, 1969. I'm an American. I don't like hyphens in my nationality. But, you know, another thing, in case you guys don't know, I'm sure you know it by now, two of the biggest enemies, I guess you want to call it, that opposed the agenda of Comrade Obama are two of our sons. We thought him right, which is Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
Their parents came to this country in the same situation I came. And you're going to find out the Cuban population. I heard last night a discussion, actually, when you were talking about it earlier. What's his name? We were talking about it.
Rubio?
No,
Boehner? No. Hang on a second here. Rand Paul.
Rand Paul said that he was all for this new thing for Cuba right now. And Marco Rubio went right back to him and told him, I said, are you nuts? Are you crazy? So if I intended to support Rand Paul, forget it. He's off my books now. You know, he's off my books. But now, then, the Cuban embargo came. Now, let me tell you something about the Cuban embargo that people don't know. The Cuban embargo has really not damaged the economy of Cuba. It wasn't designed to do that. The Cuban embargo was designed to stop Cuba from spreading an ideology of terror elsewhere. It was designed to prevent the Cuban government from using American cash to spread revolution. A containment to topple the regime at last. At the very last, has served to send a moral statement that America do not do business with monsters. The embargo has accomplished that much.
Yep.
With the USSR gone, Venezuela barely hanging on, Cuba's in dire straits. Now it's time for the toppling of the Cuban government right now. Not to jag the embargo with nothing in return, like it's happened. You know, the embargo, I don't know how many of you people have heard a video that a friend of mine produced a few years ago. The name of the video is still going around. Is Obama the next Fidel Castro? It's a 3.5-minute video. We had over 100,000 hits already in YouTube and every place else. Anyhow, at that I'm referring to a friend of mine who happens to be a Catholic priest in Cuba, childhood friend. Actually, he is more than a Catholic priest now. He's the vicar of a diocese in Cuba. And him and I communicate with each other. So, a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to know his opinion. I said, you know, I'm very careful what I write to him in the internet and vice versa, because you never know what can happen. And here's what he told me. I'm going to read it. The embargo has not really hurt Cuba. The reality is that bad and ignorant government has destroyed the economy. As a few years ago, they ordered to cut every bit of sugar cane in the fields, as he was going to have a record year. Anybody knows anything about sugar cane? You don't cut everything. You have to leave some alive for later on. He ordered to cut every bit of sugar cane in Cuba because he was going to have a record year. Time came, no customers. So that destroyed the economy. The number one industry in Cuba, the sugar, was destroyed by that. The new relations with Cuba will only benefit the government, as every dollar coming to the island via tourism goes to a government agent called Gaviota, that the funds are administered by the Cuban army. Okay? People will never see any of that. They will continue being oppressed. More so because the government will have more money to continue their terror. That's what the opinion of my childhood friend, the Catholic priest in Cuba, is. So that tells you. Obama has ignored the fact that Cuba has introduced tons of drugs, including cocaine and heroin over the years, and sent members of the secret police to commit Medicare fraud. He didn't know it happened. Ignores the fact that Cuba has worked closely with Islamic terrorist organizations and has friendly diplomatic relations with communist terrorists and have helped establish socialist governments in Latin America. I think I already tell you about that. Cuba is considered one of the biggest violators of human rights in the world. Has assassinated more than 14,000 people, jailed over 300,000, and not counting the people that perished in the 90-mile voyage in the small boats trying to escape. By the way, just yesterday afternoon, I heard new figures from the Coast Guard. So the last few weeks, that has increased 64%. People trying to get out of Cuba because they know if this goes through in Cuba, that's it. They cannot get out of there. This will not go right. Cuba has given asylum to more than 70 American criminals who have committed serious crimes, including murder, drug trafficking, and Medicare fraud. Have you heard anything about these people coming back to the United States? Is this deal? No, it's not going to happen. Raul Castro, at the same time as Obama was speaking, in a televised statement to the Cuban people, said, "We have been able to make headway in topics of interest to both nations. President Obama's decision deserves the respect and acknowledgement of our people, but the economic blockade must cease immediately, and if the Congress does not agree, should be made a presidential order." Then the bloody dictator made it clear in an interview last week with the Chicago Tribune that no changes are to be expected in Cuban communist system, and America should not expect it to happen. And if we bring up anything about human rights, America has their dirty hands with human rights of their own. That's right. That's what Raul Castro said. Engaging in diplomatic relations and lifting the embargo unconditionally will prolong the suffering of the Cuban people. And Comrade Obama and his minions, responsible for this in history, have betrayed the defense of human rights and fundamental freedoms that we all believe on. I've been asked so many times recently, would you like to go back to Cuba? And my answer has always been the same. Why would I go back to Cuba? To see the Cuban people suffering and knowing my money is going towards their repression? How could I enjoy it if I knew the waiter has served me perhaps will not have anything to eat that night? or if he said the wrong thing to me, he could end up in jail, or worse. I would go to a free Cuba, yes, to a free Cuba. I would love to have all my friends, my family, my kids, my wife, and all my dear friends come to Cuba with me, so I could show them the places where I was born, the beauties of Cuba, the places that I knew as a kid. I would love to do that. But I will never go to Cuba unless Cuba is free. And I will go as an American citizen for a visit, stay as long as I want to, but then I'm coming home. This is home for me. As an American of Cuban heritage, I would do whatever I can do to put a stop to this infamy. And I pray that my adopted land, the one that I love and adore and took me in, does not have to go through the rigors that I went through as a kid. This is time to speak up. It's time to talk. It's time to expose the people. A lot of people tell me, this could never happen in the good US of A. My friends, it's happening in the good US of A while we sleep. And it's time to do something about it. Because one thing about it, remember this, I had a place where to come. We lose the United States of America, where do we go? This is the last bastion of liberty in the whole wide world. So people tell me, are you afraid to speak up? No, I'm not. I'll say what is in my mind. And I will speak up because I feel that's my obligation. I hope you guys join me now. One thing I brought today, if you want to have a handout, the Helms-Burton Law, which is the thing that Barack Obama is violating now. I made some copies of it, the Helms-Burton Law. I made a few copies so you guys can read it and understand what the Helms-Burton Law says about the embargo of Cuba. Again, I hope you guys join me in praying for the people of Cuba, because now more than ever, the people of Cuba need your prayers. So thank you very much.
Okay. Please go to the microphone if you have a question. Please go to the microphone if you have a question.
I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
While you're moving over there, let me see this just a second here. Jack, would you go to the mic real quickly here? Let me put Jack in here first. And we brought up Ron Paul. And when this occurred, Ron Paul and Marco Rubio got into quite a row back and forth. Rand, thank you, Rand Paul. Rand Paul is going to be a presidential candidate. When I saw him on Megyn Kelly's program that night, I completely wrote him off. Absolutely no consideration for this man at all. This is what he said. Not only does he support what he's doing, but he took it a step further. Jack, I want you to tell what you said when you were in Cuba and the young lady was telling you what a fool America was. Just tell us what she said to you at that point in time.
Okay, excuse my voice a little bit, but back in the 90s, I went on a medical trip with some doctors, and we went to Cuba, and amazing, I might say. The beauty is just amazing. But we had a meeting with the third person in command in Cuba, this woman. There's a giant mural of Castro, and he's facing Freedom Square. There's 1 million people, and as he stands there, a little 12-year-old girl is waving a Cuban flag standing beside him. She became third in command, and she was head of business and economy, whatever. So anyway, we were talking about the hospitals we were going to do. At that time, it was a new thought, and it was called medical tourism. And a lot of Europeans go to Cuba, and they're real fancy hospitals, and she was sitting there, and this was in the 90s, And she said, you know, America is, you're a bunch of fools. It's a wonderful place, but you're fools. You're complacent, lazy. She said, because you deal with China. And China is worse than we ever thought of being. As far as human rights, they've done more atrocities. We've tried to work with them, and you can't trust them. We were sitting there like, whoa. But she said, we're right on the shores of America, and they should be working with us. But no, you made a decision. Now, keep in mind, this is what, how many years? 50? Yeah, well, more than that. Back in the late 90s, so it's quite a while ago. But she said, you're going to get in deeper with China, and they're worse than we ever thought of being. And it will be your downfall. And then we walked out of the office, and we talked about a lot of other things, but from here to that door, there was Fidel Castro, who waved at him. It was really something, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, the reason I wanted you to hear what he said about this woman saying you're fools because you're getting in bed with China is that very same night on Megyn Kelly, when Rand Paul was favoring this move by Obama, he said it's much like when Nixon normalized trade with China, which I thought was a really good thing. Now, folks, just think about this for a minute. Without allowing China to have access to America's consumer base, China would still be a third-rate, third-world, non-threatening country. Today, they are working toward certainly regional
supremacy.
Yes, but there's another word I'm trying to think of. Can't think of it right now.
Dominance?
Yeah, but that's still not the word. But hegemony. Thank you. They're actually working for total global control. You'd be shocked at where they are. China is behind virtually everyone that's giving America problems today. China has done more to destroy our economy by, well, let me put it, the unpatriotic, un-American globalists in our government have done more to destroy our country and our government by shifting power and control to communist governments around the world. He talked about betrayals. Those betrayals, if you've been a member of the Birch Society like I have since 1988, much of what he shared about the betrayal of Cuba and everything, we've known about that for a long time, folks. I sometimes wonder if we even have an American desk at the State Department.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Somebody that favors America there. Darn near everyone in our State Department favors everyone but America. And our Defense Department and other places that are rife with communists and now Muslim influencers. And so anyway, we've got serious, serious problems today. Rand Paul, I'm sorry, you're not what America needs. No. You're an idiot when it comes to foreign policy. That's my opinion.
I forgot to say something to you guys. We're talking about having relations with Cuba again. Are you guys aware that a few months ago, Vladimir Putin made a visit to Cuba? You know what he did when he was in Cuba? He inaugurated or opened a new Air Force base in Cuba. So, you know, we're going to make friends with Cuba. Our enemy is opening an Air Force base in Cuba, or makes Air Force base in Cuba, which, by the way, I heard reports recently that they have spotted Russian bombers in the Caribbean, flying around the Caribbean. I heard those in the news. Anyhow, that's something I forgot to tell you about.
Okay, go ahead.
I believe a lot of American people think that an infusion of tourist money into Cuba would be such a big help to the local folks there. From what I understand, none of that money would go to them without going through the Cuban government and the military and then be just doled out about like it is now. Is that correct?
Cuban industry is set up as a corporation, a government corporation. All the money for years that goes into Cuba goes to this particular fund of this corporation called Gaviota. And this gaviota is administered by the Cuban army.
Well, so how do they get the money that people spend in the bars and the restaurants and things like that? Does that
Because
go directly?
Gaviota owns all the restaurants, all the hotels.
Okay. So
They
none
own-
of that would go.
All of this is owned by the government. In Cuba, you don't own anything.
How about tip money?
I don't know how they work that out. But I will tell you this much. If you could get a job in Cuba, in the industry, in the tourist industry, you make more money than a doctor will by working in the...
Okay, Joe.
Back in 1999, someone I knew quite well was in Havana. And he was staying in a private house right across the side street from the U.S. Embassy, which is a very, very large building. He spent some time there on his own, wandering around. And in every little restaurant, you could spend U.S. greenbacks. Every single one. If you gave a $10 bill out for a beer that cost $1, they would give you back a 5 and 4 ones and change. If you took a taxi and the fare was $2 and you gave the driver a 5, he'd give you back 3 ones. U.S. currency was the primary currency used in Havana at that time. So how is there an embargo? There's a question for you. And is it still that? Is that still the case? Is U.S. currency still the primary currency used in Havana?
Let me put it this way. They hate our guts, but they love the American dollar. You know, when I came to this country, as a 17-year-old, one of the things was I had to be sponsored by somebody here in the United States. And they had to send me my plane ticket and my visa and everything else. Okay? Somewhere, and I don't know where, I got a return ticket to Cuba. The reason why they made you buy a return ticket, because half of that money went to Cuba. Half of the dollars went to Cuba. So, you know, they might hate the United States, but they want the American dollar.
Also, Ralph, address the fact that many other countries around the world send tourists there already, without the United States.
Yeah.
They have a tourist industry there already.
You know, wait a minute, you got a question? I'll address that in a minute.
First of all, thank you so much for your
Very well.
presentation. I appreciate it. The atrocities that the United States has committed against many countries is beyond comprehension. I lived in Budapest, Hungary for 10 years, right after the fall of communism. And of course, the Hungarians are very angry at America because in 1956, we lied to them and betrayed them, and opened up the whole Eastern Europe for communists. But I was in Cuba in 2001 and spent some time with the people. And I saw the oppression from the government, yes. In fact, the Methodist Church we were working with, the Communist Party took the Methodist Church headquarters and turned it into the Communist Party headquarters. But as I talked to the young Cuban, I think I said Hungary, I mean Cuban, the young Cuban people, they were really desirous of having a relationship with Americans. It was hard for us to get there. We had to go through the Bahamas to fly in and out to it.
It was illegal to go.
I was legal, yes.
I said it was illegal, or unless you had a special permission.
And I fortunately did have.
Okay, you know.
But the people from Europe filled the streets of Havana. There were a lot of Europeans coming in. And particularly the young people in the Methodist churches that we were working with was developing relationships with the people from throughout Europe. And they were really feeling like that the possibility of opening up for travel, transportation, communication, one of the things your report, I noticed, called for is television broadcast from the United States into Cuba. Isn't it desirable to have information going into the people and communicating with the people, and for Americans? You know, when I came back, I would love to have sent several people over to Cuba, to get to know them, to spend time with them. Understanding, because I've lived around communist countries from Russia and many others, understanding how governments work, but we're not going to punish the leadership of a country. We're going to punish the people by breaking our relationships with them. Because the elite is going to live, as you say, there's the very rich and the very poor. But I'm feeling that communication, transportation, interaction is in the best interest of the people, in spite of not hurting the government as you would like to.
Actually, I'll answer that question two ways with what you said. For many years, and I have many Canadian friends that had gone to Cuba. For many years, Canada, some of the European countries have been coming to Cuba and giving a lot of money to Cuba. However, you have never seen any access to TV, any access to the internet, any access to that. I explained it to you. I talked to people in Cuba. The people in Cuba are still standing in line to get their food, the rations for the week. The people in Cuba are still starving to death because this money is not going to the Cuban people. And the Cuban people you relate to when you're in Cuba, you're only the people that they allow you to see. The normal Cuban people, the people that I know, the people they're still, I just mentioned it a little while ago, it has increased 64% according to the Coast Guard. People leaving Cuba because they know if Comrade Obama makes a deal with Cuba, that's going to be the end for them. It's going to be the end for them. There's no hope for the regular people in Cuba. You see in Cuba when you go on a mission, and I have friends that do this, go on a mission, you see where they take you. You see what they're going to do. But believe me, there's not a thing when you go to Cuba that you do unless the government approves it. Unless it's blessed by the Cuban government. You cannot, you talk about that. I spoke about my friend. You know, he told me, when I left Cuba in 1961, I'm a Catholic. The majority of the Catholic population in Cuba was about 98% when I left Cuba. This friend of mine told me, said, we're down to maybe 1% of the population now. The religion is repressed. He told me so on that email I sent me the other day. We're going to continue to be repressed. Whenever you go to Cuba on a mission, it has been approved by the Cuban government. And the place you stay, it's been approved by the Cuban government and owned by the Cuban government. And the people you see are the people that the Cuban government wants you to see. Trust me, Cuba is not free.
I was just going to, can you hear? Yeah. I was just going to mention I had a Cuban neighbor next door to me in Alabama. I lived by him about 8 years. And he went to Cuba, he went back to Cuba, he was about 50 years old. He went back there about 4 years ago. And he said what you do when you go there, you wear as many layers of clothing as you can get on. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you pack your suitcases with mainly jeans, because those people cannot get jeans. They're $100 a pair there, and they make $1 a day or something. And you leave all that there when you leave, and you just come back with your flip-flops and a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. That's right. You leave. That's right. And he was talking about, and I think I've heard this other places, how the cars all go around with the tires tied to the roof. But I noticed when they've been showing Cuba lately, those tires are not on the roofs of the cars. So no. Castro made them take them off for those.
The ingenuity of the Cuban is unbelievable. In 1959 was the last year that American cars were allowed to come to Cuba. There's just nothing but that before then. Well, the ingenuity of the Cuban is unbelievable because they have made parts out of nothing. And they keep those cars running. I know, I've seen that. They keep those cars running. I think if Cuba's ever free, it will be anybody collects cars. I'll tell you what, they better have a big pocket full, because I'll tell you what, you're going to find anything and everything. I'll tell you what we used to do. Before you left Cuba, they confiscated your car. So what most people used to do, in those days, cars are different now. In those days, what we used to do is remove the rotor out of the car and toss it. The rotor.
The rotor and the distributor cap.
You cannot replace that rotor. You cannot do anything with the rotor car. But they've been smart enough that they fix their own thing. This friend of mine from Cuba, I'll tell you about it, the priest, was telling me, and you're talking about the money in Cuba. A few years ago, you remember this. She sent me some pictures of the mission. Now remember, he's a priest out in the country, okay? Diocese, he belongs to his country diocese. Send me a picture of where they go to mission. Had no floors, thatch ceiling, and no places where to sit. So I said, how can I help you? Well, through friends of mine, when we came up, and through my church, and friends of mine in the church, we came up with $1,000. Now here's what we have to do in order to get the money to him. You had to send the money to the nuncio of the United States, who is actually the representative of the Pope of the United States, the embassy of the United States. In turn, he sends that money to Rome. Rome will send the money to Cuba, to the cardinal in Cuba. And the cardinal in Cuba will call my friend and tell him, I got some money waiting for you. This is because it's all going to diplomatic pouch. They will not touch that money. He got $1,000. He put floors, put a roof into place. He showed me the pictures of the benches they had made over there. Now, he's got a van, an old delivery van, which they finally got it running. This is what they use in the mission, okay, to go on. It's an old delivery van, no air conditioning, nothing. He said they sit in chairs inside the van when they go wherever they're going. He needs to repair it. He got all the parts from Europe, and they repair it. So what I told you they built, plus fixing the van, that's where the $1,000 went to. Otherwise, if you send money to Cuba, it goes to the government first. And the government will give you whatever they see. Otherwise, like that lady said, a lot of people go to Cuba, a bunch of coats and pants and everything else. They take it off and give it to the family.
I'm going to ask the final question here.
Okay.
And I don't remember if it's the current Pope or the previous Pope, but a Pope went to Cuba recently and even helped to facilitate the Bible collection from the Green family to go on display in Cuba. I understand there were large numbers of people that went to see the Bible collection as well as attended the Pope there. Did that surprise Castro from the standpoint, thought he had wiped religion out, or was that some type of a setup? Would you please comment on that?
Okay, I will comment. I'll be happy to come because I know firsthand, again from my friend, the priest of Cuba. He told me, he said, very simple. When the Pope comes to Cuba, with something like this arranged, we're free to go out in the street. You know, it's heaven for us to go out in the street then, because they want us to be there. They want to show off the whole thing.
Right.
He said, for example, as a Catholic priest, it's very dangerous for me to go out in my cassock on a normal day. And we meet in people's homes to worship because the churches are too big, too expensive. They are now considered tourist attractions, and the government takes care of them.
Right.
Not the Catholic religion. But he said the thing about it is this: when something like this happens, my God says they want to all out processions. They want everything. They want everybody out because they want to show to the world how free religion in Cuba is. And the minute they're gone, the oppression comes back again.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Well, no, we need to stop here. We're running. We're over. If you got a question, please ask him. Thank you so much for coming.